Hello, Brontë-saurs and Eyre-Heads. Coming up on episode 17 of Sundays with Jane Eyre, Between Our Spirits Stood, in which we'll be talking about Volume 2, Chapter 9, or Chapter 24 of the novel, and our co-host will be Adele Hay, author of Anne Brontë Reimagined, A View from the 21st Century. Our story so far, in under 3 minutes. Young Jane has survived an abusive childhood at the hands of the Reed family and the Lowood school, where she was sent for being too rebellious. Her best friend at school, the saintly Helen Burns, dies at a very young age. When she turns 18, Jane is hired to be a governess at Thornfield to educate Mr. Rochester's ward, Adele. Jane is disappointed the house is not haunted, but she does hear a strange laugh coming from the attic. The housekeeper, Mrs. Fairfax, assures her it is just the servant Grace Poole. Jane meets Mr. Rochester. He falls off his horse. He is fascinated by her watercolor paintings, and they begin to have intimate conversations about their inner lives. Rochester reveals to Jane the story of his involvement with Adele's mother. One night, a mysterious fire breaks out in his bedroom. Jane rescues Rochester by dousing the fire and him in water. They hold hands in his bedroom. The next day, Jane thinks Grace Poole tried to murder him and can't understand why Rochester allows her to be at Thornfield. Friends of Rochester come to Thornfield for an extended holiday, including Blanche Ingram, whom everyone believes is going to marry Rochester. Jane continues her inner battle over her love for Rochester, but quells her feelings as she watches him interact with the insufferable Blanche. The mysterious Mr. Mason arrives from the West Indies, and an old woman arrives to tell the ladies' fortunes. Jane hears her fortune, but it turns out that it was Rochester in disguise as the old woman all along. What? During the night, Jane is awakened by a cry in the attic, then someone calling for help. Rochester comes for Jane, brings her to the attic, and there she finds Mason lying bloody in his bed. Jane assumes that Grace Poole has tried to murder him. She helps Rochester attend to Mason. Then they get him out of the house before anyone else wakes up. Rochester and Jane sit in the garden and talk alone. Jane is summoned back to her childhood home, Gateshead, by her dying Aunt Reed, and learns that her aunt had withheld from Jane a letter from an heir uncle wishing to make her his heir. Mrs. Reed told him that Jane was dead. Jane returns to Thornfield, and she and Rochester finally reveal their love for each other. Jane utters the famous line, "I am no bird, and no net ensnares me," and there is kissing. Yes, this is a kissing book. In Volume 2, Chapter 9, the book turns into a rom-com as Rochester takes Jane shopping. He tells a fairy story to Adele. He sings a song while he and Jane banter throughout. You don't want to miss the next exciting episode of Sundays with Jane Eyre from the Rosenbach.